because leadership is more relational than it is positional. So while I could run around and say I hit 25K, boom, I'm automatically a leader. I wasn't a leader. I just brought a lot of people in on my front lines. That didn't make me a leader. That made me a recruiter. And so I had the rights of my rank to operate as a leader. I could get into the special chats. I could go to the special functions and the VIP stuff. But was my whole team there with me? No, they weren't. I didn't have a 10K under me. I just had a lot of 1Ks or under, right? So I think it's important to talk about this because leadership is all about the relationship and the value really that you're bringing into people's lives. So let's get into this a little bit. I know you guys heard this before, but it's important to say here that people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. And for sure, people didn't know that I cared back then, right? For sure. They knew that I had skills. They didn't know that I cared about them. So I had to shift my kind of style of leadership as I've evolved in this business to slow down, work with people, build a core team, get to know them and understand what their goals are and where they wanted to go. And I had to put that ahead of my own career and my own rank advancement. So it wasn't until a couple of years later in MyDailyChoice that I hit 50K affiliate, even though I had hit 25K my first month. And that's because I had slowed down. I had to learn how to bring people with me. So a misconception in leadership is that you think once you've hit a rank that you're automatically you're there, right? But not necessarily. You may be able to hit 25K that way, maybe can even hit 50K that way, but I think you're going to have a really hard time hitting super affiliate unless you dive down into those relationships in your team. So if you're too busy trying to get ahead and say, this is my goal is 250K affiliate, and you're not connecting with people, you're actually doing a big disservice to the team. In fact, you may be endangering them from even being able to be successful at all, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about. So with that being said, it's not wrong to want to get to the top. I know there's people on the call today, they're like, but that is my goal. Like, I do want to be 250K. I really do want to be 500K. Those are my goals. And there's nothing wrong with stating that those are your goals, right? There's nothing wrong with going after that. I just think it's important to know how to do it, right? So you can't create progress by staying on a plateau. So it's important still to hit those goals and set those goals. But if you're overly competitive and aggressive, that's going to create some friction in the team instead of creating a collaborative environment. So instead, you got to ask yourself, how can you get to the top and who should you take with you? So now, as my leadership style has kind of changed, I've reached out to my core people. And, one thing that kind of was like an aha moment for me is when Josh told me that when he was a networker, he built a team of 56,000 people in Africa, Europe, Italy, all over the place, right? And I said, how on earth did you recruit that many people? How did you know that many people? And he said, I didn't. He said, I only worked with about 13. I only had a little core group. I only worked with about 13 people, and they had the connections to the next wave of people and the next wave of people and the next wave of people. And I think that was kind of an aha moment for me, because I realized that I didn't need to have thousands of relationships ongoing. I really need to have really good relationships with just a few that would then have a relationship with just a few and a few and a few, right? So he built this organization of thousands of people, but he really only had his core people. If you want to relate this to the Bible, right? Jesus, who led all kinds of people, he had 12 disciples. So I've always thought about it like that. You have your disciples. Who's your disciples? When you're going and you're setting your goals, right? Who are you going to activate? Who are you going to reach out to? You're going to say, well, I got this guy in Italy. He's got a team of 10,000 people. I got this guy over here in Africa. He's got a team of 50,000 people. I got a guy over here who's got a team of 2,500 people. And those start to add up as you're making those connections. So it's making the connections with the right people that have the teams and the relationships with people that you may not directly have, right? So Robert Hollis is another good example of this. He knows millions of people. He's enrolled millions of people, not through himself alone, but through the relationships he's leveraged throughout his career. So I think that's really, kind of eye-opening, was for me anyway, to understand that I didn't have to go recruit thousands of people myself. I just had to invest in just a few. So I had to create a change in attitude with myself, right? So then leaders eventually are confronted with this choice, and then are they going to compete at all costs to climb over everybody, or are they going to connect with others and help others climb to the top? So I had to take the latter approach, obviously, and agree that I was going to take people with me, and I was going to teach them everything that I knew. And if you talk to people on my team, they know this term. I downloaded the information in my head into their head. And I've always said that to them, like, listen, I'm going to teach you everything I know. I'm going to teach you how I did everything. And then you can take from that information and develop it into your own style of leadership and carry that onto your team. And the one thing that I feel like really separated me as I was growing into this kind of leadership within myself was I took it upon myself to teach people things that weren't necessarily all about business, right? So John Maxwell talks about in his congregation, he's a pastor, right? So that's what he talks about in his own leadership, is what really started gaining momentum in his crowd that he was leading was that he was teaching them stuff outside of just the Bible, right? As he's a minister. He was teaching people how to manage their finances. He was teaching them how to do all kinds of things. He was creating value for these people. He was creating stewardship. And for me, like, I've always been kind of the person to teach other people or teach people other things outside of just their business, right? And so I'm constantly trying to add value, and you guys will be doing the same and are doing the same. That's not all about business, because this is a people business, right? So when I'm talking to somebody, I want to know what their goals are. Their goals are going to be, they're going to say something about finances probably, or they're going to say something about their health, a product that maybe is going to help with that goal. But outside of that, I'm going to try to empower them to know that they have the ability to change their life, right? So it's deeper than that. I want to dive into developing them as people so that even if they're not in my business, they're still left better off. Like, even if they quit someday, at least they'll be able to say that they learned something from me and they got to take some value out of that experience. So John Maxwell gets in front of his congregation. He says, this is how we're going to do our finances. This is how we're going to do, this is how we're going to work together. This is how I'm going to teach you guys this. And he didn't necessarily have all the answers at the time. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't know all these different topics to teach people. Well, neither did John Maxwell at the time either. In fact, he went to the library to try to learn all of these things, and he realized there's not a lot of material he could learn from. So he spent months and months gathering up material so that he could then teach people, right, some of these things that they wanted to learn. Now, I think that's huge, and it really is, because if you're only focusing on, I'm going to teach you guys the comp plan, right? I'm going to teach you guys how to do a presentation. I'm going to teach you guys how to do this, but you're not teaching them how to grow as people at the same time. At some point, they're going to hit a roadblock in their career or in their life that's going to impact their results. And so that's why I think it's important in this industry and in this business to outgive on value, even if it doesn't necessarily benefit you to do that. It eventually does, because you're making people better. So this initiative does take time, right? And it takes effort, and it takes preparation, it takes experience, it takes research, it takes self-development, because as you're learning things yourself, as you're tackling new topics, tackling new books, tackling new things, like, okay, we're going to learn sales today, but we're going to learn how to dig yourself out of a depression ditch tomorrow, right? Like, these are things people need to learn so that they can become better humans. And a lot of times, I've heard this so many times in our business, like, I don't stay in MDC because my paycheck is astronomical. Not everybody's is, but a lot of people's are pretty good. And people don't stay because of the money alone. They stay because of the environment. They stay because of the community. They stay because they're getting something out of it outside of just what they're earning, right? And I think that's super important when you're connecting with other people and connecting with your team and trying to raise them up as individuals so that we can all be stronger. So when John Maxwell first took this to his congregation, he calls it stewardship, right? Which is basically adding value outside of the main topic of why they're there. He had a huge transformation in his congregation. He had people coming in by the droves, because now they're not just learning how to do God's work, right? They're also learning how to do all kinds of other things as well. So it's worth it for them to show up every week. It's worth it for them to bring other people as well. So I think that's amazing that he was able to do that. But now he came to a crossroad. Now that he had this information, what was he going to do with it? Was he going to hoard it to himself, right? And only his team, only his church can have that information? Or was he going to create material and create books and create seminars for other people that are cross-lined to him, other pastors in different churches? And he said that, he struggled with that for a few days, embarrassed as he was, that it took him a while to figure out if he wanted to do that or not. He had to realize that him and all the other pastors were ultimately on the same team. And so how this relates in our business is Tina Joy Carroll may have one expertise in one area, but where Robert Hollis may be weak in the same area, right? Or maybe Chris Robinson is really strong over here, but Judy Stallings is strong over here, right? So maybe our leaders all have different things that we can leverage. It's important to be able to leverage your cross line where they're strong if you have maybe a weakness in that area. For instance, you're never going to see me running a comp plan training. I'm not doing that. Like, I love how the comp plan works, so I can't break that apart for you. And I'm not going to do it. I'm going to point you to a video. I'm going to point you to somebody else. I'm going to point you to Josh. I'm going to point you to someone else. So I'm going to leverage somebody else's strengths there, but I'm also going to freely give the value that I have. I'm not going to charge people for it. Now, something interesting I learned over time from different social media experts and people that I've been working with along the way, one thing I learned was your Facebook page is like your Starbucks restaurant, restaurant. I guess it's a restaurant. Starbucks, a restaurant, coffee shop. I don't know. Okay, your Facebook page is like Starbucks. Now, when you walk into a Starbucks, you don't have to buy coffee to sit down. Like, you can sit at a table, you can plug in your laptop, you can use their electricity, you can use their bathrooms. They're not going to say for customers only. They're not going to do that. They're not greedy like that. They're giving you free value because they know if you're going to sit there and work all day, eventually you're going to buy a cup of coffee. Your Facebook page or your methods of advertising to your team, however that is, needs to be like Starbucks, right? Where you're constantly giving value. You're constantly giving value to people in your life. You're constantly giving value to people in your team. Eventually, they're going to buy something from you, right? Because, man, Jenna is always giving us free leadership training. Or Robert's always given us the free Super Saturdays he does every Saturday. And Chris Robinson's always given us free presentations, whereas you charge $10 for them, right? Or he's going to do it for free. But Todd Falcone's made a lot of his training free for us. He's giving constantly free value because he knows if he does that and he's empowering people, they're going to naturally just follow. They're going to naturally come back and say, you know what? I like this. I'm learning a lot. I'm gaining a lot from you guys. So I think I'm going to join the business because you guys already have it all in place and you got the leadership there to leverage. So when I had the secret sauce on my recruiting methods, like, the last thing I wanted to do is keep the secret sauce to myself, right? I wanted it to get out to everybody, because if you guys all become experts at recruiting and sales and marketing and all this stuff, I know that our company is going to grow, right? So if you're sitting on some golden information, you're like, I got the secret system, this is how I'm always at the top of the leaderboard, and you're sitting there on this information, not sharing it with your team, you're only hurting yourself, because now you're a climber instead of a connector. And it's important to be both, right? So the leader's got to choose to share their knowledge with others or try to create a competitive advantage. Now, it's a very interesting kind of place to be. You know, MDC has our secret sauce, but we're not hoarding it and keeping it a secret. We're not trying to charge people at the door for it. Our marketing tools, we make them free, right? All the things that we kind of do along the way, we try to do these things for free, because we know if we're bettering you guys, you're going to stay. So that's just something I want to say on that. By maintaining an abundance mindset and sharing what you have with others, you're going to be able to actually climb all together. It all is going to still help you rank advance while you're bettering everybody else. Now, one thing before I move on to the next topic I want to say is, when you're down and out, all right, when you're not doing so well mentally, right? Let's talk about mental health for just a second. You're going to probably hide away from taking leadership opportunities. You're going to probably shy away from connecting with other people. if you yourself are in a dark place in your life, you're going to find it very, very challenging to want to reach out to people, inspire them, and put them on the right path to success, because you're going to feel like you don't have the answers, as in your current life, you're not currently living it. And the reason I want to bring that up is because it's impossible to lead anybody until you've decided you're going to first lead yourself. And sometimes you got to take a minute, take a step back. Sometimes you have to take a couple days off so that you can get back in alignment, so that you can put yourself back together before you go out and try to fix everybody else's problems, right? And so I wanted to just say that because there's this real thing out there called MLM burnout, right? People get burned out in this industry. They spend so much time constantly trying to give and do and be more that they neglect themselves. And when you don't have the energy within yourself to then give to other people, you're going to get burnt out. So it's so important to first take care of yourself. What do they say when you're on a flight? Put your own air on yourself. Put that mask on yourself first before you go and put it on, even to your kids. Now, as a mom, my first reaction is going to be like, I need to save my kids, right? If I'm on a plane that's going down and they're saying put the oxygen mask on, like my first initial reaction is going to be to put it on my children first. And that's sometimes, if you're a nurturing kind of person that values other people like that, you're going to feel like you have to outgive and constantly give to other people. But if you're not first putting that oxygen on yourself, you're going to have a very difficult time in the long term leading these people, because guess what? They're going to think, I got to outgive. I got to do for everybody, and I have to neglect myself. And it's not about that, right? So it's constantly being in that balance where you're in the flow, where you're doing what you love, you're passionate about the direction that you're going in, but you're also taking care of your own needs so that you can be a better person for your team. And I just wanted to say that before we kind of move on. All right. So which kind of leader are you? Now we talked a little bit about me. Let's talk about you guys for a minute. If you want to be an effective leader, you must take responsibility for helping your team win. Notice I didn't say you have to go to your upline and ask them for all the answers. No, I didn't say that. I said you have to take responsibility for helping your team win. And it doesn't matter if you've been here for 3 days or 3 years, this responsibility is always yours. And not everybody wants to hear that. I know we talk about leverage the upline, and in many ways that is right. But at some point, you're going to have to take responsibility for your own team and the success of that team. Because let's be honest, it's super easy to point fingers at everybody else, right? And I'm guilty of this too. You know, even on the corporate side, I'm like, well, somebody else is doing that. I don't have to do that. Somebody else is doing that. That's not me. That's them. I hired somebody for that. So they're going to do that. Not necessarily, because we can assign things to other people, but ultimately the responsibility lands on ourselves. So if you're saying, well, I can't be successful because I have a bad upline, or I can't be successful because Robert hasn't responded to me in 3 days, so I guess I'm just going to sit here and wait. I'm not going to be successful because 2.0 hasn't come out yet. Like it's up to us, right? What you're going to do with what you have right now. So we have to take responsibility for ourselves and for helping our team win, regardless of who we're connected to. So how can you do that? Well, first, you have to connect with everybody on your team. That's step one. You got to connect with everybody on your team. So Tina, I know she didn't necessarily always have the bright and shiny upline that she needed. At some point, she had to say, you know what? I'm just going to be what I need. Right. And I did too, because I really did not have a great upline in MyDailyChoice, you guys, when we first got started. In fact, in many ways, I feel like I got sabotaged. My team was sabotaged. And so at some point I had to decide, all right, well, since I can't have the upline that I need, I'm going to have to be the upline that I am, so that I can fulfill the needs for my team. So how do we do that? Right. We connect with our people on our team. Really, we have to connect with them. We got to get to know them. Right? That's number 2, get to know them. And number 3 is you got to find ways for them to succeed individually and as a team. So remember, when you're a leader in this business, they're going to come to you with all their questions and they're coming to you for guidance. In a way, you're their mentor, right? So if you've had some success and it's your goal to try to lead them, you got to be able to help them succeed individually in their own life. And that's something I feel like Josh and I have really tried to do with, the people that we've been fortunate enough to mentor in our lives is, hey, like, we see you're crushing it over here, but your finances are a mess. Let me connect you with somebody that can help you with your finances, right? Hey, I see that this is going really well for you, but over here, this is not lining up. So let's see how we can fix this area of your life. And I think that's important as an upline leader or a mentor in this business to be able to help people succeed in their areas of weakness and help them kind of get to the next level. So let's talk about the difference between climbers versus connectors. Now, I've been both along the way. When I first started out, I was definitely a climber. It was like I had my goals, I had my path, I had my vision, and goodbye. Like, you are either with me or you're not. Peace out. I'm going there one way or the other. And in many ways, inherently, naturally, that is like a little bit how I am, for sure. But I had to learn also how to be a connector. So let's talk about the differences between both. So climbers think vertically. They're very focused on position, right? They're focused on the next rank. That's their next goal. They value competition, which friendly competition is okay, but in this situation, maybe not so much, too much. They seek power. They want to build their image, and they want to stand apart. So this is a climber. Now, if you're like, wow, that is me. It's not necessarily a bad thing. So stay with me for just a minute. Let's talk about connectors. Okay. Connectors, they think horizontally. All right. They're focused on relationships. They value cooperation and the cooperation of the whole team. They seek partnerships. And I think I want to pause there for just a minute, because how important is it when you're signing on a new person in your business, you're forming a partnership. Literally, they become a new franchise in your business. Okay. So you're forming a partnership with them, and their success, if that partnership is a success, you're going to be a success. If that partnership is weak or they don't have the information they need to succeed, then your entire business is going to crumble too, right? So the strength of the partnerships that you form with people are going to be very important to the overall success of your team and your own personal success as well. Okay. So you have to seek partnerships with people. Okay. Connectors build a consensus and they want to stand together. Success and leadership comes to those who embrace the positive aspects of ambition along with the positive characteristics of connecting. So if you think I'm just making the climbers look bad here, I promise you I'm not, because I'm guilty of the same thing. I'm just saying it's important to have the drive, but also have the ability to connect and bring people along the ride with you. So we got to make that shift towards connection. Okay. So we got to focus on building positive relationships with others. So let's dissect that for just a minute, because it's not just building relationships. Some of us, we are building relationships, and sometimes these are in the wrong direction. If you've ever had any team drama before, you can attest to know what I'm talking about here. We think that any relationship will do. It's not any relationship. You want to really focus and harness the positive relationship. You want to have a good partnership with people, not just any partnership. It's not just about making the connection or making the referral. It's about nurturing that whole relationship in a positive way, adding value to their lives. Okay. And people skills are important for success at any level. Okay. And this is being able to assimilate your frequency to theirs in a way. Right. And now if you're saying, well, they have a victim mindset, right? They're in a low vibration or they're just not where I'm at, so I can't relate to them. I've been there before, and I understand how you guys feel with that. I wanted to share just a story with you guys real quickly. My son is dealing with this in school right now. He's 16 years old, my oldest son. And he's like, man, all these kids do all day is roast each other, right? They're just like harassing each other all day. He's like, and I know that's wrong. That's not positive. That's negative. He's like, but I'm having a hard time making friends with them because they're so negative. And I said, I understand how you feel, because a lot of times when people come into my business, they haven't been on my level yet, right? Or whatever. They haven't had the success that I've had yet. Almost nobody. So that's okay. I have to go to where they are right now. That's something that Tina said on her call yesterday. She talked about, she said, you got to meet them where they're at right now. You got to go within their comfort zone, even though it seems like a foreign language to us where we are right now. If we are going to be a testament to them, if we're going to be a witness in their life, we're going to have to meet them where they are right now. And so I told my son, I think it's important to have balance here. Like if you're too far alienating yourself from what's happening around you, if you don't have that situational awareness, it's going to be very difficult for you to relate to them. And if you can't relate to them, you're not going to have the trust for them. They're not going to trust you to be a leader for them. Remember, leadership is all about permission. If you don't have the permission to lead, it doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter. You can't lead them at all. So I told him, listen, it's okay to laugh at their jokes sometimes. It's also an important thing to know that you have to still stand true to yourself. So you can still set a good example, but also be friends with them at the same time. Because really the goal here is to make friends and gain authority at the same time. Leadership is making friends and gaining authority at the same time. And I don't mean authority in a bad way. I just mean to gain the permission of leadership from them. That's how I mean that. So Judith Tobin's 5 qualities to help leaders connect with others are these right here. Number 1 is appreciation. And this allows for the differences in people and considers them interesting. So I know early in my career, I've really focused on target marketing. So in a way, this has made me a very polarizing leader. I know Todd has personally called me on this and he's like, hey, you're very polarizing, Jenna. It's like, we either love you or we hate you. And I'm like, okay, let me work on that. So have an appreciation for all the differences of people in your organization is very important, right? It allows for differences. So that means all religions, all types of people, all aspects of life, like we're appreciating where they are and all that they are. When we find them interesting instead of you're not one of us, right? So target marketing, I think, is a very important thing. However, when you're growing as a leader, it's important to become likable for all types of people, not just a certain type, if that makes sense. So appreciation allows for the acceptance and really love for everybody. Number 2, sensitivity. Okay, so sensitivity is understanding people's personal feelings and taking into account their different moods and their emotions and all that kind of stuff that's going on in their lives. So it's very important to have sensitivity towards what somebody is going through. Now, previously, my leadership in the past, if I see people on my team posting absolutely crazy stuff on Facebook, I'm going to reach out to them and say, hey, listen, maybe not going to work for business. I'm guilty of the same thing, of course, but I'm going to give counsel, right? And I need to have sensitivity for them. Like, listen, maybe that message works for their audience, right? I don't know. I can't be a judge of that. Maybe their whole audience that follows them loves and appreciates what they're posting. And maybe it looks weird to me because I'm just not there yet, or I'm not there mentally, but maybe it works for them. So having sensitivity for what they're going through in their life is important, and not to, try to make them be something else, like understanding where they are and being accepting of where they are. Number 3, consistency. So this is a quality of being real versus phony, and just really giving people sincere compliments, right? Having consistency in how you are, in your own character. Like if I'm going to tell you guys something that I really love about you, I want to mean it. I'm not going to just blow smoke up your skirt, right? Being consistent with being real and instead of phony. Like, it's not all about image. Now, some of us want to go and get our headshots first, right? We want to go get our professional photos done first. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you want to match the character behind the photo, right? You don't want to just be a photo and then have a completely different reputation. It's important to have consistency in who you are and the authenticity of where you're standing and where you're walking. All right, number 4 is security. So this is basically not trying to be the top dog, right? So this is like an ego check for us. Not trying to be the top dog. It knows that helping other people win is not a loss for you. For instance, when I see my team on the leaderboard, I'm extremely excited about that. I'm so fired up that my people that I've taught and trained are on the leaderboard. That's important to me. It's important to me when other people are ranking advancing, and it's not just about me, right? So if you're the star of the show all the time, it's going to be really hard for your people to want to get ahead or even move beyond where you've been in your career. So having the security to know that it's okay for your team to win, and it actually reflects better on you as a leader when your team is winning. That's number 4. So number 5 is humor. So this is laughing at yourself sometimes, okay? Not to be overly sensitive with he said, she said, whatever. Being able to take things in stride and being okay with where things are. Sometimes we got to laugh at ourselves. I laugh at myself all the time. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And, I look back and sometimes they're funny and sometimes they're not that funny. But ultimately, I try to turn everything into a learning lesson so that we can get better, so that I can get better and move forward. So one thing I want to say is that connecting well. Now, if some of you guys are like, I'm a connector, 100%, I'm not a climber. Well, let me see. There's actually a downside of being only a connector, right? Because you can connect well, which is super important, but it's not everything. If you lack the drive, the motivation, the production, and you never develop authority in your team, you're not going to accomplish anything. So it's important to be kind of a hybrid model of both the climber and the connector versus just one or the other. Now, I will say this. If you're a natural connector and you're saying, yep, that's definitely me, then what you're going to want to work on is adding energy and adding and intensifying your drive and your motivation and setting those goals to create a sense of purpose and urgency throughout your team. So now let's move on really quickly to value the team. Let's talk about this for just a second. Now, management has changed over the last 100 years, okay? Now, it's interesting now what's going on with our world right now, if you look at leadership across the world. But really, like 100 years ago, leadership was command and control, management by fear. This is like an old paradigm. It's an old model. It's an old way of leading people. That is just really not that effective, okay? Management tactics have changed since the last 100 years, though. And we're actually kind of going back to ancient wisdom, which is completely different now, which is showing respect for people, which is developing trust with people, identifying your vision and helping people see it, also listening to people, reading the environment, and acting with courage. So these are the new kind of aspects of leadership that we have to incorporate to be with it for today. So if you're a dictator in your team, that worked 100 years ago, but dictatorship just doesn't work now. It may work for a time. There are some dictators in the world that did gain power over a time. Hitler had power over a time, but it didn't last, did it? I mean, at some point, something cracks. Something has to give. So if you're a dictator in your team and it's my way or the highway, or this is the group you have to be in, this is the way you have to do things, it's not going to work long term. So it's much better instead to have respect for your people and to develop that trust with those relationships, right? Okay, so one thing I want to add is the Chinese sage Lao Tzu said he advises leaders, I should say, to be selfless and to keep their egocentricity in check, because it's much more effective to be a leader that is more selfless, to lead without dominating. All right. The wise leader is like a midwife. All right. So they don't intervene unnecessarily. They allow the mom to give birth on her own, right? And they're only there as a backup for emergencies and things like that. A midwife knows to let the mom own the birth process. Well, just as you're a leader, you're going to let your leaders own their process. You're going to let them rise into their own kind of niche style of teaching and their own way of leading. And that's okay, because I know we say we got to duplicate. Yes. However, we're talking about thousands of personalities here that we're dealing with. And I'm never going to be just like Robert Hollis. No matter how hard I try, it's just not going to work. I'm never going to be able to build a team like Judy Stallings or Barb Miller. So I have to do the way it works for me. And I think it's important to understand that we got to let our people own their style of leadership and just be there for guidance and mentorship when they need it most. So as my own leadership has changed and kind of morphed along the way, I went from, I want to win, and you can too. I want to win with you. I want you to win, and I'll win too. So I think that's just the most important thing to think about here, is that success is fleeting. As we have experienced, we've seen, especially in the MLM industry, we have highs and lows and highs and lows. It's a roller coaster, right? Success is fleeting, but relationships are lasting. And you never know how you and your team members might be able to help one another in the future as you stride onward towards leadership. So one thing I want to say is that No one ever achieved anything of significance on their own. Like as much as you think it's okay to just blow through the ranks on your own efforts, it's really about the collaboration of the team. And what the cool thing is about if you're building a lot of relationships, right? Even if you don't succeed on your first run, if you've got good relationships, you are primed and ready for the next run, and your team is going to be ready to go. So one example I want to throw out here is Judy Stallings. People all scratch their head at how the heck did Judy Stallings hit super affiliate in 9 months? Okay, she did a live video announcing to the world what she was going to sell. But we didn't see that underneath, the years before that, she was being a connector. She was making all her relationships. She was staying in touch with people. She was calling people. She was checking in on people. She was adding deposits into everybody's lives so that when she was ready to make a move into her own leadership, the time was right. She flipped the switch and it was go time. So if you're like, well, we're not succeeding, but I got a lot of relationships, that's okay, because guess what's coming next? We're moving into this 2.0 era of MyDailyChoice, which is really like a whole brand new company. And if your relationships are ready to go now, you've got the trust, you're adding value, you're getting everybody lined up, geared up. Guess what? When that switch flips, everybody's going to be ready to run, and you're going to see the success in your team. This is going to set you up for the success for your future and their future as well. So 2 things I want to add here before we wrap up this call, 2 action steps. Evaluate yourself and your teammates. Are they a climber or are they connectors? If you have particular climbers that are astronomically trying to climb on their own, maybe it's time to reel them in a little bit and say, hey, don't forget, you got to hold hands and bring people with you, okay? And then if you just have connectors, right, they're sitting around at the water coolers making friends but not going anywhere, it's time to kick them and give them a little bit of a nudge and say, hey, I know we're really having fun here in our social environment, but guess what? This is the goal. This is the mission, and bring your people with you, right? So those are the things I want to leave with you guys today. And I will see you guys on next week's training, which is next Wednesday. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next call. Bye-bye.
Recording stop.